The twin suns of Haven hung low in the sky, painting the world in shades of gold and orange. Shadows stretched across the rolling hills, and the distant forests glimmered with light, reflected from the crystal-like leaves of native plants. The air was warm but carried a faint metallic scent, a reminder that this planet was not Earth, but a new home for humanity. Dr. Ilara Vance stood at the edge of the laboratory's observation deck, watching the sun's rays fall on the valley below. Her hair, dark as the night sky that would soon arrive, fluttered in the soft breeze. She had spent 15 years on Haven, studying the wildlife, the plants, and, most importantly, the creatures that had become her true companions. The Skylighters. Skylighters were magnificent beings. Towering dragons with shimmering scales that reflected the light of the suns. They were the crown jewels of Haven's ecosystem. They were not only beautiful, they were intelligent, sensitive, and fiercely loyal to those they trusted. Humanity had learned quickly that these creatures could not be treated as mere animals. They responded to care, to emotion, and to music. Tonight, Ilara's thoughts were heavy. In her hands, she held 3 tiny hatchlings, no bigger than a loaf of bread, their eyes glimmering with curiosity and innocence. Their wings were delicate, almost translucent, and each scaled body had the soft, warm glow of life, just beginning. She settled into a chair in the corner of her lab, letting the hatchlings curl against her chest. The room smelled of herbs, clean air, and a faint trace of dragon, warm, sweet, and alive. She began to sing softly, the old lullaby that had been passed down by her grandmother on Earth, the song she now used for the Skylighters. Hush now, little ones. Close your eyes. The stars will guide you across the skies. Her voice was trembling, but the hatchlings calmed almost immediately. They nuzzled her gently, their tiny tails flicking as if in rhythm to her song. Even in this new world, with dangers she could barely imagine, the simple act of singing seemed enough to protect them, even if only for a moment. Ilara's mind wandered to the threats that loomed beyond Haven's atmosphere. Humanity had barely begun to understand the galaxy, and already, danger was knocking at their doorstep. A fleet of alien ships had appeared near the system's edge, a species unlike anything humans had encountered. They were cold, calculating, and merciless. Reports suggested that they were harvesting planets, stripping worlds of life to fuel their own empire. Haven, with its unique creatures, was next. She glanced at her hatchlings again. They chirped softly, as if sensing her worry. Humans had survived in this galaxy not by strength alone, but by ingenuity, empathy, and an uncanny ability to adapt. And Ilara hoped, desperately, that her small dragons could survive what was coming. The laboratory itself was a marvel of human engineering and alien adaptation. Crystal walls reflected the sun's fading light, while the floors were embedded with sensors that monitored temperature, humidity, and the vitals of every creature inside. Humming softly from the ceiling, the support systems kept the hatchlings warm, healthy, and safe. Ilara's thoughts returned to the lullaby. The Skylighters responded to more than just sound. They felt the emotions behind it. Her heart poured into the song, a mix of love, hope, and determination. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her voice carry the message of safety and trust. Her mind wandered to the first time she had met the Skylighters as a species. She had been terrified at first. Towering beasts with wings large enough to blot out the suns, eyes that seemed to see through a person's soul, and voices that could shake the air. Yet beneath all that power, there was intelligence and curiosity. Humanity had learned, slowly, that the bond between humans and these creatures was more than a scientific curiosity. It was something deeper, something uniquely human. The hatchlings wriggled slightly in her arms. One of them, the smallest, let out a soft chirp. It was as if it understood the song, the meaning behind it, even without knowing the words. Ilara smiled softly. These tiny dragons were not just creatures of Haven, They were symbols of the future, of the connection between life and those willing to nurture it. Outside, the light of the twin suns faded completely, leaving the laboratory bathed in the gentle glow of artificial lamps and the bioluminescence of the hatchlings. Shadows stretched across the room, giving the scene a quiet, almost sacred feel. Ilara's voice faltered for a moment, and she paused to wipe a tear from her cheek. Her song was no longer just a lullaby. It had become a promise that she would protect them, no matter what. Then the alarms began to sound. Soft at first, then insistent. She froze, feeling the sudden tension prickling her skin. The sensors in the lab had detected movement outside the colony. Not human movement, not natural wildlife movement. Alien ships had entered Haven's orbit. Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. The hatchlings chirped nervously, sensing her tension, but also her determination. She hummed softly under her breath, letting the song flow through her and into them. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here. We'll be all right." Ilara stood, holding the hatchlings tightly against her chest, and walked to the observation window. The fleet was unlike anything she had seen. Sleek, dark vessels moved with precision, scanning the planet below. They were cold, alien, and powerful, but Ilara reminded herself that humans had survived against impossible odds before, and the Skylighters had their own power, their own instinct, and most importantly, their bond with her. She took a deep breath and made a decision. Tonight would not be a night of despair. It would be a night of preparation, of understanding, and of hope. The lullaby was not over, it had just begun. She would teach the hatchlings not only to survive but to fight, to protect, and to trust in the strength of their bond with humanity. Ilara sat at the console, her hands moving quickly over the holographic controls. She checked the life signs of every skylighter in the colony. All were accounted for. Some older, larger dragons stirred in their habitats, sensing the new threat. She began sending calm signals to them. Her voice carried through both song and subtle psychic pulses that she had discovered were effective with the species. Outside, the suns had completely disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the colony in the soft, silver glow of Haven's moon. It was beautiful, silent, and calm, but she knew the calm was fragile. Soon, the night would be filled with uncertainty, and she had to be ready. The hatchlings stirred again, stretching their tiny wings. One of them opened its mouth as if trying to mimic her song. Ilara laughed softly, a sound that carried warmth and reassurance. She picked up another hatchling, holding it gently in one hand while keeping the smallest cradled against her heart. "You'll be ready," she whispered. "We'll face it together." She sang again, louder this time, filling the laboratory with the sound of love and courage. The lullaby carried across the room, bouncing off the crystal walls, seeping into the hearts of all creatures present. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the alien fleet above, not the unknown dangers of the galaxy. Only the song, the hatchlings, and the promise she had made. For the first time in many days, Ilara felt a flicker of hope. Humanity might be small, in the vastness of space, their colonies fragile, but the bond between human and skylighter was something no alien weapon could break. It was a power born of empathy, courage, and love, the power that had always made humans special. She held them tight. She closed her eyes, and she sang. The laboratory trembled slightly as the first ripple of alien ships passed overhead. The vibrations were faint, but enough to make Ilara's hatchlings stir nervously in her arms. She pressed her palms against them, whispering softly, letting her voice and warmth calm them. Even the tiniest dragons, no larger than a loaf of bread, could feel her fear, but more importantly, they could feel her courage. Ilara took a deep breath, her mind racing. The aliens were precise and disciplined, unlike any species humans had encountered. They moved as a single organism, each ship part of a coordinated attack force. Yet, she knew something crucial. They had never faced a species that could combine intelligence, emotion, and creativity. Humanity's edge lay in adaptability, and tonight, the Skylighters would be the bridge between instinct and strategy. She placed the hatchlings gently into a soft cradle filled with warm, moss-like material. Each one blinked up at her, their tiny eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the lab. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "Everything will be all right. I promise." The hatchlings chirped in response, and for a moment, Elara allowed herself a flicker of hope. Their species was intelligent, yes, but they were still young, still learning how to react to the wider world. The bond she had nurtured since their hatching was fragile. Every touch, every song, every word mattered. Her thoughts drifted to the first Skylighter she had ever bonded with, years ago. She had been younger, less confident, and alone on the outskirts of Haven's forests. The creature had appeared as if from nowhere, enormous and magnificent, its scales reflecting the sunlight. Fear had struck her first, but the creature did not attack. Instead, it had studied her, tilting its head as if trying to understand her. She had sung then, too. A simple melody, human in origin, carrying only hope and calm. And it had worked. The Skylighter had responded, mirroring her tone and gestures. And from that moment, a connection had formed, one that would shape her life forever. Tonight, the stakes were far higher. The alien ships had begun scanning the colony, their sensors sweeping across every building, every habitat. Any sign of Skylighters would draw immediate attention, and Elara knew that hiding was impossible. Instead, she had to use the bond she had spent years building. She activated the neural interface she had developed for this purpose. A gentle hum filled the lab as a translucent field of energy enveloped her. She could feel the hatchlings' tiny minds brushing against her own, sensing their curiosity, their fear, and, most importantly, their trust. "Stay close," she whispered, her thoughts flowing into theirs. "Follow my lead. You are stronger than you know." The hatchlings chirped again, and their wings twitched involuntarily. Tiny sparks of bioluminescence flared across their scales, reflecting the surge of energy as the bond strengthened. Elara felt a warmth spread through her chest. They were ready, at least as ready as they could be. The alien ships began to descend, sending landing pods streaking through the atmosphere. They were precise, almost surgical in their approach, scanning for movement, heat, and life signs. The colony's defensive measures were minimal. Humanity had relied too much on hiding, and now there was no time left. Elara moved quickly. She accessed the colony's emergency systems, sending calming signals through the habitat networks to the older Skylighters. She reached out mentally to the larger dragons in their enclosures, transmitting reassurance. These creatures, some the size of small buildings, stirred in response. Their massive wings flexed in readiness, their eyes glowing with recognition as they sensed her presence. "Tonight, we fight together," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Then, she sang. Her voice filled the laboratory once more, but this time, it was different. It was no longer a lullaby. It had become a message, a link between species. The hatchlings responded immediately. Tiny wings flapped in synchrony, their lights pulsing in rhythm with her song. They had never coordinated like this before. Yet something in her tone, her confidence, her calm, something unmistakably human, made them move as one. Outside, the alien landing pods touched down. Their technology was advanced, yet untested against a planet that refused to yield. Elara could see the shadows of tall, armored figures stepping onto Haven's soil, scanning for life. The first pods landed near the research labs, where the Skylighters had nested. The colony's human defenders were unprepared. Panic rippled through the base as alarms rang. But Elara knew she could not rely solely on them. The Skylighters had to be the first line of defense. She closed her eyes and focused, sending her thoughts like ripples across a pond, reaching the hatchlings and the larger dragons alike. "Trust me. Fly. Protect," she commanded mentally, each word carrying the weight of years of care. The hatchlings leapt from their cradle, flapping their tiny wings with surprising strength. They circled her, glowing softly in the dim light, creating a radiant halo around her. Each movement was instinctive yet guided by her gentle influence. Even so small, their presence was a signal. Humanity was not powerless. The older dragons responded too. Massive wings beat against the air, shaking the ground. Their bioluminescent patterns flashed like warning lights, illuminating the landing aliens in colors that seemed almost magical. The aliens paused, confused by the sudden movement of what they had assumed were passive wildlife. Elara opened her eyes, her resolve firm. This was the strength of humanity. The ability to inspire, to coordinate, to combine empathy with action. The alien invaders had power, but they lacked the intuition that humans shared with the Skylighters. The first confrontation was chaotic. Small dragons darted between landing pods, nipping at sensors and creating distractions. Larger dragons swooped from above, their wings generating gusts strong enough to knock armored aliens off balance. The aliens fired, but the dragons were agile, weaving through obstacles, their small minds guided by Elara's song and their instinct. Elara moved through the lab, monitoring vital signs and sending encouragement. "Yes. Keep going. Protect the hatchlings," she shouted, though her voice was almost drowned out by the storm outside. One of the hatchlings, the smallest of the three, faltered in midair, wings trembling. Elara's hand shot out instinctively, catching it in a protective cradle. "You're okay," she whispered. "We're together. You're strong." The dragon chirped softly, then launched again, stronger this time, trusting her fully. Hours passed like minutes. The aliens were persistent, but they were unprepared for the cooperation they faced. Humans worked alongside dragons, combining technology with instinct. Defensive barriers deployed just in time, creating traps that slowed alien movement. Meanwhile, the Skylighters, guided by Elara's voice and mental cues, used their speed and agility to outmaneuver opponents. In a quiet moment, Elara looked up at the hatchlings. They glowed brighter than ever, their wings flapping steadily. Despite their size, their courage was unyielding, inspired by the bond she had nurtured. She smiled, tears streaking her face, as she realized that this connection, this unique human ability to empathize and inspire, was what made them formidable. The aliens began to retreat, their confusion evident. They had not expected a species capable of such coordination between mind, emotion, and instinct. Humanity's strength was not in firepower alone, but in creativity, empathy, and courage. The colony, battered but intact, had survived the first wave. Elara returned to the hatchlings, holding them tightly against her chest. "We did it," she whispered. "We're safe, for now." The little dragons chirped in agreement, snuggling closer, their warmth comforting her tired body. She sang once more, softly. A lullaby this time, letting her exhaustion and relief flow into the song. Outside, the twin moons rose, bathing Haven in soft silver light. The battle was over, but Elara knew it was only the beginning. The aliens would return, stronger and smarter. But for the first time, she felt hope, not fear. Humans and Skylighters were a team, one forged from trust, empathy, and courage. They had survived together, and that bond could not be broken. Elara closed her eyes, holding her hatchlings tightly. The lullaby carried her promise. She would protect them, and they would protect her world. Together, They were unstoppable. The following morning on Haven began quietly, almost deceptively so. The twin suns rose slowly, spilling warm gold across the valleys and forests. Birds of the planet, strange and colorful, chirped their morning songs, and the crystal-like leaves of the trees sparkled like jewels. But beneath the calm surface, tension ran thick. The aliens would return. Ilara knew it. She moved through the colony's corridors, her boots clicking against the metal floors. Her mind was already racing with plans. Last night had been only a test. The aliens had underestimated humanity, underestimated the bond between humans and skylighters. But they would not make that mistake twice. Ilara paused at the hatchlings' enclosure. The tiny dragons stirred at her approach, their glowing scales pulsing softly in greeting. They had slept fitfully through the night, their dreams filled with strange noises and shadowy images of the alien pods. Ilara knelt beside them, letting her hand brush over their soft bodies. "Today we'll be ready," she whispered. "Together, we can face anything." The hatchlings chirped in response, tiny wings fluttering. Though small, they already carried courage beyond their size, shaped by the trust Ilara had built. She sang softly to them, a melody meant to calm and encourage. Each note carried meaning, and the dragons absorbed it, their confidence growing with every vibration of her voice. Beyond the laboratory, the larger skylighters were gathering in the forests and cliffs. Their intelligence, combined with human guidance, allowed them to anticipate movement and react quickly. The older dragons, some enormous and powerful enough to lift humans effortlessly, formed a living shield around the colony. Their scales shimmered in the morning light, a warning to any intruder. This world was defended. Ilara joined the colony's command center, a room filled with screens, holographic maps, and human strategists. The aliens' fleet had been detected moving closer, deploying satellites and reconnaissance drones. The humans were nervous, unsure of how to coordinate with creatures so unpredictable, yet powerful. Ilara took a deep breath. She had trained for this moment for years, but theory was one thing. The reality was far more intense. "Everyone, listen," she said, her voice steady. "We're not just humans, and we're not just animals. Our strength lies in partnership. The skylighters are intelligent. They can fight, defend, and think, but they need our guidance. We will act as one." The strategists nodded, some skeptical but willing. Humans had survived against impossible odds before. They could do it again. They began setting up defensive perimeters, traps, and communication networks. Drones scanned the surrounding forests, while sensors tracked every movement in the skies. Ilara returned to the hatchlings, holding them close as the first warning sirens echoed through the colony. The alien ships had entered Haven's orbit again, faster and more numerous than before. Their landing pods streaked toward the planet like shooting stars, precise and deadly. "Stay calm," Ilara murmured. "Remember your training," she sang softly, letting her voice weave through the air like a thread, connecting her mind to the hatchlings. The smallest of them chirped, its wings trembling at the first sight of a pod descending nearby. Ilara held it tighter, sending warmth and courage through their shared bond. The aliens' first wave hit the outer defenses. Human soldiers fired from fortified positions, but their weapons were limited against the alien armor. That's when the skylighters intervened. The larger dragons swooped down from cliffs, their wings creating gusts strong enough to topple some landing pods. Plasma-like flames licked the ground, forcing the invaders to retreat and regroup. The hatchlings, despite their size, were not idle. Under Ilara's guidance, they darted through the air, creating distractions and drawing attention away from the human defenders. Their small, glowing bodies moved with precision, guided by instinct and the bond they shared with her. Even a tiny dragon could cause chaos when coordinated with intelligence. Ilara monitored the battle from the command center. Sweat dotted her forehead, but she did not falter. Her mind connected with every skylighter she had trained, sending instructions, reassurance, and courage. Each creature responded in turn, their movements fluid, almost musical. The aliens were clever, but they were unprepared for this type of coordination. Hours passed in a blur of activity. Explosions shook the forests, yet the skylighters moved with grace, avoiding collateral damage whenever possible. Human defenders adapted, learning to predict alien tactics with the help of the dragons. Every strike the aliens made was countered by quick thinking, improvisation, and the unwavering bond between species. At one point, a large alien walker advanced toward the hatchlings' enclosure. Ilara's heart leapt. The tiny dragons were vulnerable. She rushed to the containment area, singing a melody faster and louder than before. The hatchlings responded immediately, their wings beating furiously. The smallest one let out a shrill chirp and, surprisingly, emitted a small spark of plasma from its mouth. It was weak, but precise, hitting the alien device and forcing it to halt. Ilara smiled despite herself. The hatchlings were learning. Their instincts, combined with the bond she had nurtured, allowed them to act with courage and precision, far beyond their size. Humanity had survived by adapting. Now, the dragons were doing the same. The alien fleet began to falter. They had expected fear, chaos, and easy victory. Instead, they faced a world united humans and skylighters, instinct and intellect combined. The larger dragons carried humans to strategic positions, allowing them to strike from the air. The smaller dragons disrupted communications, darting in and out with incredible speed. Every move was coordinated, almost as if a single mind guided them. Ilara felt a surge of pride and relief. This was what she had hoped for, a demonstration of what humans and skylighters could accomplish together. Their bond was not just emotional, it was tactical. The aliens underestimated the power of trust, empathy, and creativity. As the sun reached its zenith, the alien forces began to retreat. Their ships lifted off, firing sporadically but losing cohesion under the relentless cooperation of humans and dragons. The colony had survived. Haven had survived. Ilara returned to the hatchlings, holding them tight. "You were amazing," she whispered. Their tiny bodies glowed warmly against her chest, their eyes bright with understanding. Even in the midst of danger, they had trusted her, followed her guidance, and grown stronger. She sang a soft lullaby again, letting the melody calm their racing hearts and her own. Outside, the forests slowly returned to quiet. The dragons' glowing forms dotted the cliffs and treetops, standing vigilant, ready for any threat that might return. Ilara knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would learn from their mistakes, and their next attack would be fiercer. But humanity had a secret weapon that no technology could match: the ability to connect, to inspire, and to fight as one, with creatures of unparalleled instinct and courage. As she held the hatchlings, singing softly, Ilara realized that they had survived not because of weapons or armor, but because of trust, empathy, and the bond between life forms. The Skylighters had chosen to fight with her, and together, they had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, human ingenuity and courage could tip the balance. The day ended with the twin suns setting behind the distant cliffs. The colony was battered, but alive. The hatchlings nestled against Ilara, tired, but unharmed. She closed her eyes, letting their warmth and soft, glowing forms fill her with peace. Tonight, they had survived. Tomorrow, they would grow stronger. And together, humans and dragons would protect Haven, no matter what came. Ilara sang once more, softly, the notes weaving through the air like threads of hope. "We are together," she whispered. "We are strong. We will not be broken." And for the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe it. The night before, Haven had survived but barely. The colony lay in quiet, surrounded by forests that bore the faint marks of battle. Charred ground, scorched trees, and craters reminded Alara that the aliens had returned stronger, more determined. And now, they would not underestimate the humans or the Skylighters again. Alara woke early, her mind already planning the next steps. The hatchlings stirred in their cradle, tiny wings twitching as they sensed her presence. She picked them up gently, humming a familiar melody that carried reassurance and courage. "Today, we will be ready," she whispered. "Together, we can protect Haven." Her voice, soft but unwavering, reached the smallest dragon's mind. The hatchlings chirped, their bodies glowing brighter than usual. They were learning, growing, and already beginning to understand what it meant to fight alongside humans. Outside, the larger Skylighters were already gathering. They swooped through the skies, landing in coordinated positions around the colony. Some perched on cliffs. Others glided over the treetops, forming a natural barrier. Their scales shimmered in the sunlight, and their glowing patterns signaled readiness. Humans had begun to see the dragons not just as creatures, but as allies, warriors who could act with both instinct and intelligence. Alara moved through the colony's command center, a space filled with holographic screens, sensors, and maps. Her team of strategists had been working through the night, setting up defenses, traps, and early warning systems. But this time, Alara had something the aliens could never predict: a fully coordinated force of humans and Skylighters. "We need to act before they reach the main settlement," she said, pointing to the approaching fleet on the holographic display. "They'll expect resistance, but they won't expect strategy combined with instinct. We will use our dragons to strike first, to confuse, and to control their movements." The strategists nodded. There was skepticism in their eyes, but also hope. They had seen what the Skylighters were capable of yesterday, guided by Alara's bond. Today, they would expand that power. Alara returned to the hatchlings, placing them carefully on a soft platform. "You are ready," she whispered. "Watch, learn, and trust. Your courage is your strength." She sang a song that was part lullaby, part command, each note a gentle instruction that the tiny dragons instinctively understood. The aliens arrived sooner than expected. Pods streaked through the sky, some dropping silently into forests, others landing near the colony's outskirts. This time, they moved with purpose, knowing the humans had survived the last attack. But Alara had anticipated their strategy. The larger dragons were already in position. They swooped down as the first pods touched the ground, wings beating like storm clouds. The aliens fired, but the dragons were faster than the weapons could track. A massive dragon swooped low, creating a gust that toppled a group of invaders, while others used precise movements to avoid damage and strike back. The hatchlings, though small, were crucial to the plan. Alara directed them through the mental bond they shared, sending calm instructions and encouragement. They darted between alien patrols, glowing softly, creating diversions, and disabling sensors with tiny sparks of plasma. Their small size made them nearly invisible until it was too late, and their coordinated movements disrupted the invaders' formations. Alara monitored the battle from the command center, her eyes moving quickly between screens and live feeds. She could feel the dragon's movements in her mind. Their confidence, their instinct, and their trust in her guidance. The aliens had never faced a species that could fight with emotion, intelligence, and instinct all at once. They were methodical, but predictable, while humanity and the Skylighters were unpredictable, fluid, and creative. One of the alien walkers advanced toward the colony's main power hub. If it succeeded, the colony would be disabled, and the dragons would lose critical support systems. Alara's heart raced. She sent a mental signal to the nearest dragon, a massive one with scales like polished emerald. The creature understood instantly, swooping down in a deadly arc, wings creating a gust that toppled the walker. A smaller hatchling darted between its legs, emitting a spark of plasma that short-circuited the machine. Elara smiled. The strategy was working. Humans provided creativity and tactics. Dragons provided instinct, agility, and raw power. Together, they were a force the aliens could not anticipate. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher and casting stark light across the battlefield. The aliens continued to press, but their formation faltered. Every step was countered by humans using their intelligence, their ability to improvise, and dragons using instinct, agility, and now, experience. Ilara's mind focused on the hatchlings. They had never faced such chaos, yet they adapted quickly. Their trust in her guidance allowed them to act decisively, striking at critical points, distracting enemies, and supporting the larger dragons. Even the tiniest dragon had become a strategic player in the battle, its small sparks of energy disabling enemy devices and creating openings for humans to act. At one point, a massive alien ship descended, firing at the colony's main gates. Humans scrambled to defend, but the dragons reacted first. A group of larger skylighters leapt into the air, weaving through the fire with precision. Plasma flames licked the alien hull, forcing it to retreat. The hatchlings darted between the smaller pods, creating diversions that made targeting nearly impossible. Elara felt a wave of pride. These creatures, once just hatchlings in her care, were now fighters. They had learned to trust, to act, and to survive not just for themselves, but for the humans who had nurtured them. Humanity's edge was not in strength alone. It was in empathy, creativity, and courage. The aliens began to falter, their retreat disorderly. They had underestimated the combined power of instinct and intelligence, of trust and strategy. Humanity had turned their weaknesses into strength. Elara's voice, carrying her song, flowed across the battlefield, connecting every dragon and human. Every strike, every maneuver, every coordinated movement was guided by her presence. By the time the twin suns began to set, the alien fleet had retreated beyond the horizon. The colony was battered, but intact. Fires burned in small areas, but the dragons patrolled, ensuring no threats remained. The hatchlings, exhausted but triumphant, nestled against Elara, their small bodies glowing softly. She held them tightly, singing once more, softly, a lullaby of relief, hope, and pride. They had survived not because of brute strength or advanced weapons, but because of connection, trust, and the unique bond between humans and skylighters. Outside, the forests glimmered in the fading sunlight, and the larger dragons returned to their perches, vigilant but calm. The colony had learned an invaluable lesson. They were not alone. The bond they shared with the skylighters was stronger than any enemy, and it was this bond that would ensure their survival. Elara closed her eyes, holding the hatchlings close. She could feel their hearts beating in sync with hers, their trust complete, their courage unwavering. Tonight, they had won. Tomorrow, they would grow stronger. And together, humans and dragons would continue to defend Haven, no matter what threats came. As the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the valley, Elara sang softly, the notes carrying hope and promise. "We are one," she whispered. "We are strong. We will protect this world, together." The hatchlings chirped softly, tiny wings twitching in rhythm with her song. In that moment, the bond was unbreakable. Humanity's edge had proven itself once more, not through weapons, not through power, but through courage, empathy, and unity. And Haven was safe. For now, the dawn broke slowly over Haven, casting soft gold and pink hues across the valleys and forests. The air was still, quiet after the chaos of the last battle. The colony stirred, humans moving carefully among the damaged buildings, checking systems, and repairing what could be fixed. Yet beneath the calm, there was a sense of triumph. Haven had survived. Humanity had survived. Ilara stood on the observation deck, holding her hatchlings close. They were no longer just tiny, helpless creatures. They had grown stronger with each passing day, each challenge, and each battle. Their scales shimmered softly in the morning light, reflecting the bond that had formed between them and the humans who had nurtured and protected them. Ilara's heart swelled with pride and relief. The colony's humans were alive, the Skylighters were safe, and the alien fleet had been driven off for now. But she knew better than to assume the threat was gone forever. The aliens were persistent and intelligent. They would return, perhaps stronger, perhaps wiser. And when they did, Haven would have to be ready. She sang softly to the hatchlings, her voice carrying warmth, reassurance, and hope. They chirped in response, tiny wings flapping, and for a moment, Ilara allowed herself to smile. In their trust, their courage, and their intelligence, she saw a reflection of what humanity could become: resilient, creative, and unyielding. The humans had learned much from the dragons, too. The larger Skylighters had patrolled the skies overnight, keeping watch for any returning threats. The humans had worked alongside them, learning to coordinate, to adapt, and to anticipate movement. Together, they had formed a partnership unlike any other in the galaxy, one built on trust and mutual respect. Ilara gently placed the hatchlings on a soft platform, letting them move freely. They explored their surroundings with curiosity, chirping softly, wings fluttering. Even in the aftermath of battle, their spirits were undimmed. They had survived, and they had learned that courage and intelligence were more powerful than fear. Outside the observation deck, the larger Skylighters returned to their perches on cliffs and treetops. They moved gracefully, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the alien threat. Their scales glimmered in the sunlight, a reminder to all who looked upon them that Haven was protected not by walls or weapons alone, but by the unity of its inhabitants. Ilara walked through the colony, observing the humans as they worked. There was exhaustion on their faces, yes, but also determination. Even the youngest cadets, who had watched the battle from the safety of the command center, were inspired. They had seen what could be accomplished through coordination, empathy, and courage. They had seen the bond between species, and it had changed them forever. In the laboratories, scientists examined the hatchlings' growth and reactions. Every movement, every chirp, every spark of plasma was carefully recorded. The humans had learned that the Skylighters' intelligence was extraordinary, their instincts precise, and their loyalty unwavering. They were more than creatures. They were partners, allies, and symbols of the future. Ilara paused outside the hatchlings' enclosure, watching as the little dragons huddled together. They chirped softly, nuzzling one another, wings fluttering in contentment. She knelt beside them, placing a gentle hand on their glowing scales. "You were amazing," she whispered. "You helped protect Haven. You helped save humanity. And you will continue to grow, stronger, every day." One of the hatchlings, the smallest, climbed onto her shoulder, chirping loudly. Ilara laughed softly, a sound full of relief and warmth. She sang a soft melody, a lullaby mixed with gratitude. The hatchlings responded, their small bodies pulsing in rhythm with her voice. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, a stark contrast to the chaos of the past battles, but it was one that reminded her of why she had devoted her life to these creatures. Beyond the colony, the forests of Haven stretched endlessly, vibrant and alive. Rivers sparkled in the sunlight, and strange, colorful birds flew overhead. The planet was healing, just as its inhabitants were healing. The Skylighters patrolled the skies, sometimes soaring in pairs, sometimes alone, but always alert. And the humans, now more confident and coordinated than ever, were ready to defend their home. Elara knew that the alien fleet could return at any time. They had been driven away, but they were not defeated. Yet she felt no fear. Humanity had learned something the aliens could not understand. Strength was not measured by weapons or numbers, but by courage, unity, and trust. The Skylighters embodied that truth, and the Hatchlings were the living proof that even the smallest beings could make a difference. She returned to the Hatchlings, picking them up and holding them close. "You are part of something bigger now," she whispered. "You are part of a family that will protect this world, together." The dragons chirped in response, their tiny wings beating gently against her chest. Elara sang once more, the song a mixture of lullaby and promise. Her voice carried through the laboratory, into the forests, and across the skies. It was a song of hope, resilience, and the bond between humans and Skylighters, a bond that no alien force could break. The day passed peacefully, the colony working together to repair damage, strengthen defenses, and care for the creatures that had helped save them. Elara spent much of her time with the Hatchlings, guiding them, teaching them, and watching them grow. Each chirp, each flap of their wings, each spark of plasma reminded her that life was precious, fragile, and powerful when nurtured. As the twin suns set behind the cliffs once more, Elara held the Hatchlings tightly. The sky was ablaze with color, red, gold, and violet stretching across the horizon. The larger Skylighters flew overhead, their wings casting shadows on the valley below. The humans stood on terraces, watching the scene with awe, understanding now that their survival depended not on technology alone, but on the bond they shared with these magnificent creatures. Elara closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the Hatchlings against her chest. She sang softly, the final notes of her lullaby, carrying through the air like a promise. "We are together." The Hatchlings chirped softly, resting against her, their bodies glowing gently. They had learned courage, trust, and loyalty. They had fought beside humans and survived, and they would continue to grow, strong enough to face whatever came next. The twin moons rose over Haven, casting silver light across the valley. The forests shimmered, the rivers sparkled, and the colony stood united. Humans and Skylighters had proven that even against overwhelming odds, courage, empathy, and trust could triumph. They had survived not because of weapons or technology, but because of connection between species, between hearts, and between minds. Elara held her Hatchlings tightly one last time for the night. She closed her eyes, letting exhaustion wash over her, but also letting hope fill her heart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new adventures, but tonight, they had survived. And together, humans and dragons would continue to protect Haven, as family, as allies, and as a symbol of what humanity could achieve. Her final thoughts as sleep overtook her were simple, yet profound. They were not alone. They were strong, and they would endure. And with the Hatchlings in her arms, glowing softly in the moonlight, Elara knew that Haven was safe not just because of her, but because of the bond that humans and Skylighters had forged together. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than any enemy, and unbreakable in its courage and trust. The lullaby faded into the quiet night, a melody of hope that carried across the world, through the forests, and into the hearts of every creature on Haven. A new dawn awaited, bright and promising, for humans and dragons alike.